Sarah Jennings stood in the rain outside the iron gates of Fort Carson's Special Operations Training Command. Her hands were shaking, not from the cold, not from fear, but from rage she had buried so deep it had nowhere left to go but out. In her right hand, crumpled and soaked, was a letter. The third letter, the third rejection, application denied. 3 words, 3 times, 3 years of her life. She was 31 years old, a decade in the Army, 2 tours in Afghanistan, a Bronze Star for Valor, a record so clean it practically glowed. And yet 3 times they had looked at her application to join the Special Operations Instructor Corps and said, no. No explanation. No feedback, just no. Sarah looked down at the letter one last time, then let it fall from her fingers into a puddle at her feet. The ink bled into the water like a wound. She turned and walked back to her car. But this story doesn't end there. It begins there. 3 years earlier, Sarah had been a staff sergeant in a forward operating base outside Kandahar. She wasn't Special Forces. She wasn't a ranger. She was a logistics officer who kept supply lines running so that the men and women on the front could do their jobs. And she was good at it, better than good. One night her convoy was ambushed on a narrow mountain road. The lead vehicle hit an IED. 2 soldiers were wounded. The rest were pinned down by small arms fire from the ridge above. Sarah didn't freeze. She didn't panic. She grabbed a rifle, organized a defensive perimeter, called in air support, and personally pulled both wounded soldiers to cover while rounds cracked past her head like angry hornets. When the medevac arrived, she was the last one on the helicopter. Her uniform was soaked in someone else's blood. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking for 2 days. They gave her a medal. They called her a hero, but they didn't give her what she really wanted: respect. When Sarah came home from Afghanistan the second time, she knew what she wanted to do. She wanted to teach. She wanted to train the next generation of soldiers. She wanted to take everything she had learned in the dust and blood and chaos and pass it on, so that fewer kids came home in boxes. The Special Operations Instructor Corps was the elite. The best of the best. They trained Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Delta Force operators. They didn't just teach tactics. They forged warriors. And Sarah wanted in. Her first application was submitted on a Tuesday in March. She spent weeks on it. Every word perfect. Every qualification highlighted. Letters of recommendation from her commanding officers. Photos of her awards. A personal essay that she rewrote 11 times. She waited 3 months. The rejection letter was 4 sentences long. Thank you for your interest. After careful review, we have determined that your application does not meet our current needs. We encourage you to reapply in the future. Best of luck in your continued service. It felt like a slap in the face, but Sarah didn't quit. She trained harder. She went back to school and earned a degree in tactical leadership. She volunteered for every hard assignment, every dangerous mission, every opportunity to prove herself. 1 year later, she applied again. Same result. Application denied. This time she asked why. She called the office. She wrote emails. She requested a meeting. Nothing. Just silence. It was her friend Marcus who finally told her the truth. Marcus was a master sergeant. He'd been through the instructor program 5 years ago. He knew people. He heard things. They were sitting in a diner outside the base drinking bad coffee when he said it. "Sarah, you need to hear this, and you're not going to like it." She looked up at him. "What?" He hesitated. Then he leaned forward and lowered his voice. "They're not rejecting you because you're not qualified. You're one of the most qualified people who's ever applied. They're rejecting you because you're a woman." Sarah felt her chest tighten. "That's illegal," she said. "Yeah, it is. But they don't say that's the reason. They just find other reasons, or they don't give a reason at all. There's a guy on the selection board, Colonel William Draven. Old school. Thinks women don't belong in combat roles. Thinks we've gone soft. He's got influence. And he's been blocking applications from women for years." Sarah's hands curled into fists on the table. "That's not right. No, it's not. But it's the way it is." Marcus looked at her with something like pity. "I'm sorry, Sarah, I really am. But maybe it's time to let this one go. Find another path. You've got a great career ahead of you. Don't waste it fighting a battle you can't win." Sarah didn't say anything. She just stared down at her coffee. But inside something hardened. She wasn't going to let this go. She applied a third time. This time, she didn't just send her application through the normal channels. She made calls. She reached out to every contact she had. She found a lawyer who specialized in military discrimination cases. She documented everything and she waited. The rejection came faster this time. Only 6 weeks. Application denied. That was the letter she'd been holding in the rain. That was the moment she almost broke. Almost. Sarah sat in her car in the parking lot outside the base, staring at nothing. The rain hammered on the roof. The windows fogged up. She felt hollow. Then her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Sarah Jennings, I know what happened to you. I know who's responsible, and I know how to fix it. If you want justice, meet me tomorrow, 600, Millie's Diner on Route 9. Come alone. She stared at the message. Her heart was pounding. She didn't know who sent it. She didn't know if it was real, but she knew one thing. She was going to that diner. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small apartment staring at the ceiling, playing the message over and over in her mind. Who had sent it? How did they know? And what did they mean by fix it? By the time her alarm went off at 5 in the morning, she'd been awake for hours. She dressed in civilian clothes, jeans, a dark jacket, nothing that screamed military. She pulled her hair back into a ponytail and checked herself in the mirror. Her eyes looked tired. But they looked determined. She grabbed her keys and headed out into the early morning darkness. Millie's Diner was a small roadside place with peeling paint and a neon sign that flickered in the pre-dawn gloom. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just a couple of trucks and one black sedan with tinted windows. Sarah pulled in and sat for a moment, watching. Nothing moved. She took a breath, stepped out of the car, and walked inside. The diner smelled like coffee and bacon grease. A waitress with gray hair and tired eyes glanced up from behind the counter and nodded toward a booth in the back corner. Sarah's heart skipped. Sitting there alone was a woman. She was older, maybe 50, short silver hair, sharp eyes. She wore a simple black sweater and had the posture of someone who had spent a lifetime in uniform. Sarah walked over slowly. The woman looked up and smiled. Not warm, not cold, just knowing. Sarah Jennings, she said. Sit down. Sarah slid into the booth across from her. Who are you? Sarah asked. The woman took a sip of her coffee. My name is Colonel Rebecca Hale, retired. I used to run tactical operations for JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. Before that, I was one of the first women to integrate into combat roles back when it was still technically illegal. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. I know who you are, she said quietly. I read about you. You testified before Congress, Rebecca nodded. That was a long time ago. But some fights don't end just because you win once. They keep coming back. Different faces. Same old hatred. She leaned forward. I know what Colonel Draven did to you. I know he's blocked your application 3 times. And I know he's done it to at least a dozen other women before you. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. How do you know? Because I've been watching him for years. Draven and I go way back. He was a captain when I was breaking through the ranks. He hated me then. He hates women like us now. He thinks we're weak. A liability. A social experiment that's going to get men killed. Rebecca's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. He's wrong, and I'm going to prove it. But I need your help. Sarah swallowed hard. What do you want me to do? Rebecca reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. She slid it across the table. Inside that folder is everything you need. Documents, emails, testimonies from other women who were rejected, evidence that Draven has been manipulating the selection process for years. He's violated about a dozen regulations. If this goes public, he's done. Sarah opened the folder. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. It was all there. Names, dates, patterns. Why are you giving this to me? Sarah asked. Rebecca's eyes didn't waver. Because you're not going to leak it. You're not going to go to the press or file a lawsuit. That would take years. And by the time it was over, Draven would retire with full honors and you'd be labeled a troublemaker. Sarah frowned. Then what am I supposed to do with it? Rebecca smiled. You're going to use it as leverage. Draven's up for promotion. He's being considered for a position at the Pentagon. If this information reaches the right people before that happens, his career is over. But if you go to him first quietly and offer him a deal, he'll take it. What kind of deal? You withdraw your discrimination complaint. You stay quiet, and in exchange he approves your application immediately. No questions, no delays. You get into the instructor program. Sarah stared at her. You want me to blackmail him? I want you to negotiate, Rebecca said calmly. There's a difference. Sarah sat back, her mind racing. And if he refuses? Then you burn him. You take this to the Inspector General. You go public. You destroy him. But that's the nuclear option. And it'll cost you too. The military doesn't like whistleblowers, even when they're right. Sarah looked down at the folder again. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. You don't know me. Rebecca's expression softened just a little. Because 30 years ago, I was you. And nobody helped me. I had to fight every single battle alone. I don't want that for the next generation. I want you to win, and I want you to do it in a way that doesn't destroy you in the process. She stood up and dropped a $20 bill on the table. You've got 48 hours. After that, Draven's promotion hearing happens and the window closes. Think carefully. Whatever you decide, make sure you can live with it. Rebecca walked toward the door, then paused and looked back. One more thing, Sarah. If you do this, if you get in, don't waste it. Be better than they ever thought possible. Prove them all wrong. And when you're standing in front of a room full of men who once rejected you, make damn sure they never forget it. Then she was gone. Sarah sat alone in the booth for a long time. The waitress refilled her coffee without asking. Outside, the sun was starting to rise. Sarah looked down at the folder in her hands. She thought about everything she'd been through. The deployments, the medals, the rejections, the late nights wondering if she was crazy for wanting this so badly. She thought about Marcus's words, maybe it's time to let this one go. But she also thought about something her father had told her when she was a kid, never let anyone make you smaller than you are. Sarah closed the folder. She pulled out her phone and started making calls. 2 days later, Sarah walked into the administrative building at Fort Carson. She was in full dress uniform, every ribbon in place, every crease sharp. She carried the folder under her arm. At the front desk, she smiled politely at the receptionist. I'm here to see Colonel Draven. I don't have an appointment, but tell him it's Sarah Jennings. Tell him it's urgent. The receptionist looked uncertain, but she picked up the phone. 3 minutes later, Sarah was being escorted down a long hallway to a corner office. The door opened. Colonel William Draven stood behind his desk. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and a face like weathered stone. His uniform was immaculate. His eyes were cold. Miss Jennings, he said, not offering his hand. This is unexpected. Sarah stepped inside. The door closed behind her. She didn't sit down. I'll make this quick, Colonel, she said. I know what you've been doing. I know you've been blocking my application. And I know you've done it to other women, too. Draven's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation. It's a fact. She placed the folder on his desk. Inside that folder is enough evidence to end your career. Emails, testimonies, documentation of every regulation you've violated. If I take this to the IG, you're done. No promotion. No Pentagon. Just a dishonorable end to an otherwise impressive career. Draven stared at the folder. His jaw tightened. What do you want? Sarah met his eyes. I want in. You approve my application. Today. And I walk away. This folder disappears. Nobody ever hears about it. Silence. Draven's hands were flat on the desk. His knuckles were white. And if I refuse? Sarah's voice didn't waver. Then I go public, and you lose everything. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Draven reached for the folder. He opened it, flipped through a few pages. His face remained stone. Finally, he closed it. You'll have your acceptance letter by the end of the week. Sarah nodded. Thank you, Colonel. She turned to leave, but Draven's voice stopped her. You think you've won something here, Jennings? But let me tell you something. Getting in is the easy part. Surviving is another story. That program will chew you up and spit you out, and when it does, I'll be there to watch. Sarah looked back at him and she smiled. I'm counting on it. The acceptance letter arrived 5 days later. Sarah held it in her hands, reading it 3 times to make sure it was real. Congratulations. Your application to the Special Operations Instructor Corps has been approved. Report to Fort Bragg. North Carolina on Monday, August 12th, at 600 hours for orientation and initial assessment. She had done it. But as she stared at those words, she didn't feel victorious. She felt the weight of what came next, because Colonel Draven had been right about one thing. Getting in was just the beginning. Fort Bragg in August was a furnace. The heat rose off the tarmac in shimmering waves. The air was thick and wet, like breathing through a warm towel. Sarah arrived with her duffel bag and her orders, wearing fatigues that were already starting to stick to her skin. The training facility was a sprawling complex of shooting ranges, obstacle courses, tactical simulation buildings, and classrooms. It looked like a small city built entirely for war. At the main gate, she was directed to a staging area where the other candidates were gathering. There were 23 of them, 22 men, and Sarah. She felt their eyes on her the moment she walked up. Some looked curious. Some looked annoyed. A few looked outright hostile. Nobody said hello. She dropped her bag with the others and stood at ease, eyes forward, waiting. A few minutes later, a voice barked across the yard. "Fall in." Everyone snapped to attention. A man strode toward them. He was built like a tank. Shaved head. Neck thick as a tree trunk. The name tape on his chest read SGM Cole. Sergeant Major Cole. He walked slowly down the line, looking each candidate up and down like he was inspecting meat at a butcher shop. When he got to Sarah, he stopped. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he moved on without a word. He reached the end of the line and turned back to face them. "Welcome to hell," he said. "My name is Sergeant Major Anthony Cole. For the next 16 weeks I own you. You will eat when I say eat, sleep when I say sleep, breathe when I say breathe, and if you're lucky, very lucky, some of you will make it through this program and earn the right to call yourselves instructors." He paced back and forth. "This is not basic training. This is not advanced infantry. This is the pinnacle. We train the best, which means we only accept the best. And if you are not the best, you will fail. You will quit. Or you will be cut." His eyes swept over them. "Statistically, half of you will be gone by week 4. Another quarter will drop by week 8. The rest will barely survive to graduation. And of those who do, only a handful will ever actually teach." He stopped in front of Sarah again. "Some of you are here because you're tough. Some of you are here because you're smart. Some of you are here because someone pulled strings." He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. "I don't care why you're here. I care what you do while you're here. Prove yourself or pack your bags." He stepped back. "First exercise starts in 30 minutes. Get your gear. Move." The first week was designed to break them. They ran 12 miles before dawn. Full packs, full gear. In the suffocating Carolina heat. They did obstacle courses that left their hands bloody and their shoulders screaming. They sat through hours of tactical briefings, then were tested on every detail without warning. Sleep was rationed like a luxury. 3 hours one night, 4 the next, sometimes none at all. Sarah kept pace. She didn't complain. She didn't slow down. She didn't ask for special treatment, but she also didn't blend in, because no matter how hard she worked, no matter how fast she ran, she was still the only woman, and some of the men made sure she never forgot it. His name was Lieutenant Derek Moss. He was tall, blonde, with the kind of square-jawed confidence that came from a lifetime of being told he was special. He'd been a ranger, made it through selection on his first try. He walked like he owned the place, and from day one, he had it out for Sarah. It started small. "A snide comment during formation. Guess they're letting
anyone in these days."
Shoulder check in the chow line. Oops. Didn't. See you there. But it escalated. During a live fire drill, Sarah was paired with Moss as her spotter. They were supposed to work as a team, call out targets, coordinate shots. But Moss refused to communicate. He gave her bad ranges, wrong wind calls. He set her up to fail. When the drill was over, the instructor, a grizzled master sergeant named Carver, pulled them both aside. "That was garbage," Carver said flatly. "Moss, your calls were sloppy. Jennings, your shots were off. Do it again, and do it right." Moss smirked as they walked back to the line. "Maybe if you spent less time playing soldier and more time actually learning, you wouldn't need me to babysit you." Sarah didn't respond. She just loaded her rifle and waited for the next round. By week 3, Sarah was exhausted, not just physically, mentally. Every day was a battle. Not just against the course, but against the constant undercurrent of doubt and resentment. She could feel it in the way some of the men looked at her, like she didn't belong, like she was a quota, a token, a political statement, and the worst part was, she started to wonder if they were right. One night, after a particularly brutal day, she sat alone in the barracks, staring at her boots. Her feet were blistered. Her back ached. Her hands were raw. She thought about quitting, just for a second, just long enough to imagine what it would feel like to walk away, to stop fighting, to let it go. But then she remembered Draven's face. That program will chew you up and spit you out, and when it does, I'll be there to watch. She clenched her fists. No, she wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. Week 4 brought the first major cut. Out of the original 23 candidates, 7 were gone, some quit, some were injured. 1 failed the psychological evaluation. The group was smaller now, tighter. The ones who remained were the survivors, and the training got harder. They moved into advanced tactics. Room clearing, hostage rescue, high-value target extraction. They worked in teams, and that's when Sarah started to turn the corner. Because in the field, when bullets were flying, nobody cared about politics. They cared about who had their back, and Sarah always had theirs. During a simulated hostage rescue, Sarah's team was pinned down by instructors playing hostile forces. They were stuck in a kill box. No cover, no way forward. Moss was the team leader, and he froze. "We're stuck," he said, his voice tight. "We need to fall back." "No," Sarah said. "There's a window on the 2nd floor. If we suppress fire from the left, I can climb up and flank them." "That's suicide," Moss snapped. "It's the only play we have." For a moment, Moss just stared at her. Then one of the other guys, a quiet staff sergeant named Patel, spoke up. "She's right. It'll work." Moss hesitated. Then he nodded. "Do it." Sarah moved. She stayed low, using smoke for cover, and made it to the building. She climbed the drain pipe, pulled herself through the window, and came up behind the instructors. "Bang," she said, tapping 2 of them on the shoulder. "You're dead." The drill ended. The instructors called it. "Good work, Jennings," Sergeant Major Cole said. "That was smart. That was aggressive. That's what we need." He looked at Moss. "And you hesitated." "Leaders don't hesitate. Fix it." Moss's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. After that, something shifted. The men didn't exactly welcome her, but they stopped treating her like dead weight. Patel started sitting next to her at meals. Another guy. Corporal Hayes asked her to help him with land navigation. Even Moss, though he never apologized, stopped sabotaging her. Sarah wasn't one of the boys, but she was one of the team. And that was enough. By week 8, only 14 candidates remained. The training had become brutal. 30-hour field exercises, sleep deprivation, psychological pressure designed to crack even the toughest operators. But Sarah was still standing. And then, one morning, Sergeant Major Cole called her into his office. She walked in, stood at attention. "At ease, Jennings," he said. She relaxed slightly. Cole leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You've done well," he said. "Better than I expected, if I'm being honest." "Thank you, Sergeant Major, but I need to tell you something." Sarah's heart sank. "There are people watching this program. People who want you to fail, not because you're weak, but because of what you represent." "I know, Sergeant Major." "Do you?" He leaned forward. "Because if you make it through, if you graduate, you're not just going to be an instructor. You're going to be a symbol. Every decision you make, every class you teach, every mistake you make will be scrutinized. You'll be held to a different standard, a higher one. It's not fair, but it's reality." Sarah met his eyes. "I can handle it," Cole studied her for a long moment, then he nodded. "I believe you." He stood up. "Get back to training," Sarah saluted and turned to leave. But as she reached the door, Cole spoke again. "Jennings," she looked back. "Make them eat their words," she smiled. "I plan to, Sergeant Major." Week 12, the final phase. Out of 23 candidates who started, only 11 remained. Sarah was one of them. The final test was called the Crucible, a 72-hour field exercise that combined everything they had learned. Land navigation, combat tactics, survival skills, leadership under pressure. And it was led by a senior evaluator flown in from Washington, Colonel William Draven. Sarah saw him step off the helicopter on a gray Monday morning, and her stomach dropped. He wore his dress uniform, chest full of ribbons, face like carved granite. He walked past the candidates without acknowledging any of them, went straight into the command building, and disappeared. Moss leaned over to Sarah. "You know him?" She kept her eyes forward. "We've met? He looks like he eats nails for breakfast." "He does." Moss glanced at her, but didn't ask more. That afternoon they were briefed on the crucible. Sergeant Major Cole stood at the front of the room. Behind him, Colonel Draven sat in a chair, silent, watching. "This is it," Cole said. "Your final evaluation. You'll be dropped in the field with minimal supplies. You'll navigate to 3 separate objectives. At each objective, you'll complete a tactical scenario: hostage rescue, high-value target elimination, ambush response. You'll be graded on performance, decision-making, and leadership." He paused. "You'll be working in teams of 2. Your partner assignments are posted outside. You have 1 hour to prep your gear, then your wheels up." The room emptied quickly. Sarah walked outside and scanned the list. Her heart sank. Team 6, Lieutenant Derek Moss, SSG Sarah. Jennings, of course. Moss found her 20 minutes later while she was packing her ruck. "Looks like we're stuck together," he said. "Looks like it." He crouched down next to her. "Look, Jennings, I know we got off on the wrong foot, but this is the final. I'm not trying to fail because of old grudges, so let's just work together and get through this." "Deal?" Sarah looked at him. For the first time, he actually seemed sincere. "Deal." They were dropped by helicopter into the dense pine forests of North Carolina at 1800 hours. The sun was already sinking. The temperature was dropping fast. Sarah and Moss hit the ground, checked their map and compass, and started moving. The first objective was 8 miles northeast, a simulated hostage situation in an abandoned building. They moved in silence, navigating by terrain features and dead reckoning. As they walked, Sarah could feel the weight of what was happening. Somewhere behind them, Draven was watching, evaluating, waiting for her to fail. But she wouldn't. Not now. They reached the first objective just after midnight. It was an old cement block building surrounded by woods. Instructors playing hostiles were positioned inside with role players acting as hostages. Moss and Sarah crouched in the tree line, observing. 2 guards outside, Moss whispered. "Probably more inside." "We go in fast," Sarah said. "I'll take the left door. You take the right." "On my mark." Moss nodded. They moved. Sarah came around the side of the building, took down the guard with a simulated suppressed shot, and breached the door. Inside, chaos. Instructors shouted. Blanks fired. Smoke filled the room, but Sarah moved like water. Smooth. Precise. She cleared each corner, identified threats, called out hostages, and controlled the room. Moss came through the other side. Covering her 6, in 90 seconds it was over. "Clear," Sarah shouted. An instructor stepped forward and lowered his weapon. "Good work. Fast, clean, no hesitation. You're greenlit for the next objective." Sarah and Moss exchanged a glance. 1 down. The second objective was 12 miles south, a high-value target elimination. They moved through the night, stopping only to check their compass and hydrate. By the time the sun rose, they were exhausted. But they kept moving. The objective was a small compound. Role players simulated a terrorist cell. The target was inside. "We don't have enough intel," Moss said, scanning the area with binoculars. "We don't know how many hostiles are in there." "Then we make them show themselves," Sarah said. "How?" She smiled. "Distraction." Sarah circled around to the far side of the compound and set off a flashbang simulator. The noise brought 3 instructors running out of the building. Moss took them down from his sniper position. Sarah moved in through the back, located the HVT, and called it in. Target secured. The lead instructor grinned. "Nicely done. Unorthodox, but effective." 2 down. The final objective was the hardest, an ambush scenario. Sarah and Moss were supposed to be moving through hostile territory when they'd be hit by a surprise attack. They had to survive, regroup, and counterattack. They knew it was coming. They just didn't know when. They were moving through a narrow ravine at dusk on the 3rd day when it happened. Gunfire erupted from both sides. Simunition rounds cracked past their heads. Smoke grenades went off. Contact left, Moss shouted. Sarah dove behind a boulder, returning fire. But then she saw it. Moss was pinned. 2 instructors were flanking him from the high ground. He didn't see them. Moss, 6 o'clock high! But he couldn't hear her over the noise. Sarah made a choice. She broke cover, sprinted across open ground, and threw herself between Moss and the instructors, laying down, suppressing fire. Move, move, she screamed. Moss rolled to cover, turned, and engaged the flankers. Together they fought back. Coordinated, aggressive, relentless. Within minutes, the ambush was broken. The shooting stopped. Sergeant Major Cole stepped out from the trees, followed by Colonel Draven. Cole was smiling, Draven was not. That, Cole said, was exactly what we're looking for. Situational awareness, selfless leadership, adaptability under fire. He looked at Sarah. Jennings, you just saved your partner's life. That took guts. Then he looked at Moss. And you didn't freeze. You trusted her and fought back. That's teamwork. He stepped back. Congratulations. You both pass. Sarah felt her knees almost buckle with relief. But then Draven stepped forward. Not yet. Everyone froze. Draven's eyes locked on Sarah. Sergeant Jennings, I want to see you. Alone. They walked into the woods, away from the others. Sarah's heart was pounding. Draven stopped in a small clearing and turned to face her. For a long moment.
He said nothing, then he spoke. You blackmailed me, yes.
Sir, you threatened my career. Yes, sir. His jaw clenched. I could have fought you. I could have called your bluff. But I didn't. Do you know why? Sarah didn't answer. Because deep down I knew you were right. She blinked. Draven exhaled slowly. I've spent 30 years in this army. I've seen a lot of change. Some of it good. Some of it hard to accept. I believed women didn't belong in combat roles. I believed it would weaken us, make us soft. He looked her in the eye. I was wrong. Sarah felt her breath catch. I watched you these last 12 weeks. I watched you get knocked down and get back up. I watched you lead. I watched you sacrifice. And I watched you earn the respect of men who wanted nothing to do with you. He paused. You didn't just pass this course, Jennings. You excelled, and you did it while carrying a weight none of the others had to carry. His voice softened just slightly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I was wrong about you. And I'll make sure that no woman after you has to fight the battles you fought just to get a fair shot. Sarah didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. Thank you, sir. Draven extended his hand. She shook it. Congratulations, Sergeant Jennings. You've earned this. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in front of her first class. 24 Navy SEAL candidates stared back at her. Young, confident, some curious, some skeptical, and sitting in the back of the room observing were Sergeant Major Cole and Colonel Draven. Sarah took a breath. Good morning. My name is Sergeant Sarah Jennings. I'll be one of your lead instructors for tactical operations. Some of you are probably wondering what qualifies me to teach you. She let the silence hang for a moment. I've done 2 combat tours. I've been under fire. I've pulled wounded soldiers out of kill zones. I've led teams through some of the worst situations you can imagine. And I've earned every scar, every lesson, and every right to stand in front of you. She looked each one of them in the eye. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm not here to make you comfortable. I'm here to make you better. And if you give me your best, I'll give you mine. One of the candidates in the front row raised his hand. Question. Sergeant, go ahead. Is it true you applied to this program 3 times before you got in? Sarah smiled. Yes. Why didn't you quit? She thought about it, then she said, because quitting would have meant they were right. And they weren't. The room was silent. Then from the back, Draven started clapping, slowly. Then Cole joined him. Then the candidates. The whole room erupted in applause. Sarah stood there, feeling the weight of everything she'd been through lift off her shoulders. She had fought for this, bled for it, sacrificed for it. And now, she was exactly where she belonged. 6 months later, Sarah received a letter. It was from Rebecca Hale. Inside was a single sentence. I told you. Make them eat their words. You did. Proud of you. R.H. Sarah folded the letter and smiled. She had done more than survive. She had won. And now every day, she stood in front of the men who once rejected her and taught them what it really meant to be strong. Not because of size, not because of gender, but because of heart.